my fellow comic book collectors, it's Alan, the Comic Collector Geek, and this is the Wednesday video where I answer your questions. Every week, I do this, where people ask me questions, and then the following week, I answer the questions. So if you have a question that you want answered, put it in the comments below, and I will answer it next week. Let's get into this week's questions. The first question comes from I Like What I Buy. And he asked, what was the first appearance of Family Guy in comics? Well, it was actually Family Guy #1 from 2006. And it goes for about $30 to $50. And if you find it in a 9/8 slab, it goes for about $300-400. So that's Family Guy #1, first appearance of the Family Guy, the whole group of characters from that. It has Stewie and Lois on the cover. Just so you know, there's also later on in 2007, so the series only ran for 3 issues, and then 2007 they had another issue, which was a free comic book day from 2007, so something else to look for. You can you show some Darwyn Cooke covers as well? So you asked for Darwyn Cooke. I actually was trying to find, I had like 3 or 4 other Darwyn Cooke covers, but I couldn't find any of them. But I did find 2 Darwyn Cookes in my collection. Both are Catwoman, and both are 9/8 actually, strangely. So we got this one, Darwyn Cooke, where this is like an alternate cover for Catwoman with the Looney Tunes. They did a bunch of these alternate covers. Yeah, it's from 2016, and it's Catwoman 46, Darwyn Cooke cover. And the other one, other Catwoman one, this is actually a reprint, but it's a cool cover still. This is Catwoman #1, the Dollar Comics version of it. there's another version, which is the real version, but this is the Dollar Comics version of it. I got it for the cost of the slab, so I just wanted to get a Darwyn Cooke cover. So yeah, yeah, just a nice one. And there's actually a couple that I really like that I have, but I couldn't find. One is one where he does a Starfire, and it's just this very simple, very small picture of Starfire on this blue starry night kind of background, and her hair is kind of flowing up, almost like a flame going up into the night. That's one. And the other one that I have is the iZombie cover, which is really cool that he did. So those are the 2 that I have, but I don't know where they are. Other 2 that I can think of. So I'm sorry I couldn't find them. I did search, not where I expected them to be. So I was looking around, couldn't find them. They'll turn up. My collection is just such a mess. I'll find them someday. Okay, next question comes from Jerry Wilson. What are your thoughts on brittle and slightly brittle pages for Golden Age comics? Brittle pages and slightly brittle pages, it's kind of one of those weird things in grading. Sometimes things that are considered brittle pages aren't actually brittle pages. What can happen is if you get a little bit of flaking of the pages where it's like brittle on the edges, CGC will denote that as brittle pages. If you get like a few things, like maybe the cover has slight amounts of flakiness or brittle, like towards the edge, then they will label it slightly brittle. So, but both don't mean that the whole comic is just about to deteriorate. So sometimes it can mean more, and sometimes it can mean less. I've seen brittle pages, and it's actually a totally brittle comic. And I bought those, and I was shocked how bad they were. You can see that they are disintegrating in the slab. Fortunately, when they actually slab the comics, they'll put in a special type of paper that actually reduces the brittleness, and it protects the comic from increased brittleness, I should say. It's like archival paper. it's one of those things. I don't recommend buying Brittle page books, but sometimes especially with Golden Age, you don't really get that much choice in the matter. Like there's just not that many to choose from, and often they are Brittle pages, just because of sheer age. So it is what it is. Always be aware. Look for things like debris in the slab if you're going to buy a slabbed Brittle Pages comic, and that or brittleness inside the bag. If it's a raw comic and it's in a bag, look for little flakes. That can be a sign that there can be some serious issues with the comic. So look for that. It's a telltale sign. That's all I can really recommend. It's really up to you if you want to risk buying the Brittle Pages, but the archival paper does protect from future decay to a certain extent. Okay, so the next question comes from K. Munin. Thanks as always for your insight. What is your opinion of Udon Comics? Have you ever heard of DarkStalkers? There are 2 female characters I think you'd like. I've heard of both Udon Comics and DarkStalkers. I bought a few Udon comics. They did a bunch of swimsuit ones with Street Fighter, so I have those. I don't have any Stalkers in my collection actually, but I've seen the title and I didn't collect it when it came out. So I wasn't really into comics at that point. That was slightly before when I really got back into comics. And I wasn't going to the comic shop that often. I was more buying back issues. But it is, yeah, it looks like a cool series. I just not super familiar with it. But I do like their anime style. It's a very much, if you're familiar with Street Fighter, I like the anime style of that. And their swimsuit specials that they did were pretty great. So that's really all I can say about it. Next question comes from William Barrett. Namora is awesome. I really like her. Is the story good? So last week I showed Namora #1, and I actually read it, and it's not a bad story. It's like it's 3 stories in the book. And it's like sort of different places. One is in Shanghai, one is in the Yukon, in South America, and a third is, I forget where the third one is, but basically, it's interesting stories, like sort of jungle adventures in the first one, and Asian Oriental adventures in other. And I think it's kind of interesting because the way it's written, you can really sense that they're really trying to give you that worldly adventure, that she's kind of exploring the world and having great adventures doing it. And it's an interesting story. The first, like the one where she's in the in the jungles, is kind of has that very typical story where there's evil white men who basically are corrupting the natives to try to steal all their gold. And Namora and these actual archaeologists, try to save the natives from these evil white exploiters, like these evil guys. And it's a cool story. It's like, like they have this, basically the bad guys are using this idol, that's this massive giant idol, and having it talk to the natives saying, hey, give us your gold base. They help these guys. And she discovers that, he's just like having people speak into this big idol. And she basically stops them and then starts speaking through the idol and telling them the truth. To foil them. It's a pretty interesting story. It's very Golden Age-ish, and it's fun. Lots of, like, Namora's awesome throughout. It's very, if you like good girl art, it's a lot of good girl art in it. So yeah, it's a pretty good read. The next question comes from Mike Swintel. Could you do the worst 5 worst Wonder Woman covers of all time? worst art, etc. Okay, so what I did is I looked at the Wonder Woman first series. Like, I figured there's just too many books to go through. If I go through first series, second series, third series, and all like sensations and all the other titles that she's involved with. Um, so I only looked at the first series, and these are the ones that I think are the worst. But I say that with a bit of hesitation. And the reason I say that with a bit of hesitation is I actually like like all the covers for the most part. And these would be the weakest of the bunch, is what I would say. It's not that they're the worst, like meaning that they're terrible or anything like that. It's just the weakest of the ones. And we're going to start with this one. This is Wonder Woman 211. I just think it's weak in terms of, it's weak for me, I guess, because it does. I would rather if it was just this circle in the middle, and they kind of made it a full page, I would have liked that better. But because they put in all these little bubbles, it's really hard to see the art, and I think that kind of detracts from it. So that's why. It's not that I don't like the artwork. It's just that I find that that's a bit distracting and just detracts from, really getting to see the images. So that's the first one. Now the next two are actually connected to each other, so I have to show them both. The next two are 126 and 130, and it's this guy here. I just think he's really goofy. And this is with Wonder Tot as the headline character. So you got Wonder Tot instead of Wonder Woman. And it's with this genie guy. And you got, so this is one. I mean, this is actually a better of the two covers. Like, I mean, this is Wonder Tot, and she's like on this genie guy. And she's like smacking this big boulder. I mean, it's kind of a cool cover for the flames and all. But I just wish it was Wonder Woman on the cover instead of Wonder Tot. There's a bunch of Wonder Tot covers, actually. But these I thought were the weakest of the two. Of the many, sorry. Next one is Golden Age, and this is Wonder Woman 27, and I just thought this one was a little hokey. It's H.G. Peter cover, and it's like, you got Etta Candy in the front there, and they're cattle wrestling, and and they're just in this weird jalopy, and going after this poor little calf. So with the lasso of truth. So just I don't know. I thought it was kind of a weaker cover. It's not that bad, but it's one of the weaker ones, I would say. Another Golden Age one, and this was to me the worst of all the Wonder Woman covers. I just think I don't know why, I just don't really like it. And this is Wonder Woman 35. And the reason I don't like it is I don't like the cats. Like, something about the cats are just kind of weird looking. They have these kind of evil eyes, red eyes, and they're in these like weird green circles. It's supposed to be Wonder Woman in the 9 Lives, the 9 Lives Club. I just don't like the cats. I don't know what. Something about them. I'm actually a cat person, but something about the cats. I don't like the way that they look. Something about them. I don't know. You tell me. Do you like the cats? But it is a cool book. I mean, it is Wonder Woman 35. It's like early Wonder Woman. Yeah, something about it. I just don't really appreciate it. I don't really like it as much. But yeah. So those would be my 5 worst, I guess, Wonder Woman covers. And yeah, hope that answers your question. Next comes from Kuroma's about Vampirella. Did you read Christopher Priest's run? Did you enjoy it? I did read it. It's from 2019. It was interesting. It actually starts out quite cool because it starts out with this plane crash. Okay, and then you basically have Wonder Woman being the sole survivor of this plane crash, and Wonder Woman, Vampirella, being the sole survivor of the plane crash, and it basically has her in kind of like therapy, which is a little bit weird. And she's talking to this therapist who is basically asking her about what happened and is she traumatized, and she's telling her the psychologist about all these weird, crazy events and dealing with the devil to dealing with like these weird undead creatures to just all this weird stuff that's going on. And he's like, oh, that doesn't exist. There's no vampires. There's no werewolves. There's no devil. He's just in denial. And that's kind of the story. It introduces some kind of cool characters. I thought it was, yeah, so. Like, I personally, my favorite run on Vampirella, jeez, was back with, I really did enjoy the Warren Vampirella stories. They were very one-off-ish, but I really enjoyed the Harris run on Vampirella. Vengeance of Vampirella. The first 5 books in that I thought were really cool. I really liked Hemorrhage, which was kind of a cool character that could manipulate blood. I thought that was a cool foil for Vampirella. So those were my favorite for what series would be my favorite runs. But the Christopher Priest run seemed interesting. I can tell he's probably a reasonable writer, but it was so-so. So-so. Yeah, it was okay. It started off really cool, and then kind of was so-so. Mass Peanut. I'd love to get your opinion on the future of Golden Age comic book collecting. Do you think in 20 years' time there will be still a market for Golden Age books, with fewer and fewer new collectors joining the community each year? And in 20 years' time, most of the older collectors are no longer around. Do you think Golden Age will still carry high value? So I do believe that there is a collecting gene, like that there are people who generally love collecting anything. And that collecting gene basically makes people want to get rarer and rarer things. Golden Age books kind of represent that. I mean, if you look at it this way, I am a collector of comics. I was too young, very much too young, to be a Golden Age collector. They didn't exist when, like I was 30 years removed from that era, but yet I'm a big Golden Age collector. And the reason for that is Golden Age actually is something that is almost like a calling. you once you experience it, people kind of gravitate to it, especially with the comics of the modern era being a little bit weak. They're actually trying to improve them. I have to give them some credit. People will be checking out, where was that first appearance of Batman? Where was that first appearance of XYZ character? And a lot of that time you sort of get into the Golden Age. And nowadays, it's actually easier to get into the Golden Age than it was when I was a kid. When I was a kid, Golden Age books were just not accessible. It was only until recently that I could find access to the Golden Age. And because, just like me, I got converted maybe about 5-6 years ago into Golden Age. Because really it wasn't that I didn't like Golden Age before, I just didn't have access to it. I think there's a lot of collectors that are kind of gravitating to Golden Age, that are getting, access to these books and, discovering them and getting excited by them. Just like certain modern comics, like the Ultimates. I talked about the Ultimate Spider-Man, Ultimate X-Men, and all those ones that have just come out. Those had strong stories, and people gravitate to those. Well, the Golden Age offered lots of really great stuff. And the reason the comics were so big in the Golden Age was they did have great stories, and people will always be seeking great stories. If it's 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 100 years from now, people will kind of want to find those great stories and find those first appearances. And a lot of major characters came out of the Golden Age. So I think My opinion that is that in 20 years, and you can come back, comment back in 20 years if I was right or wrong. But I think it will actually be stronger, and you'll see much more of an investment. I almost see it as sort of like the thing where we look at paintings from like Da Vinci or some of the greats, the Renaissance painters. And you think, well, all the people that were associated with those are long dead. Anyone that was even a baby at that time is long dead, and even multiple generations have passed, and they are long dead. But yet those masters still resonate with people today. And I think the stories of the Golden Age and the artwork of the Golden Age will still resonate with people in the future. And I think it will be even more so like valued as something of merit and value because it is so far removed. We actually, in a way, respect the Renaissance painters more than we should. And I say that with like kind of a weird weird thing, because what I'm saying by that is that at the time they probably didn't get the respect that we give them today. We think of these guys as masters, as geniuses, as but at the time back in the Renaissance they were probably just they were still considered great, but they weren't given the sort of godlike status that we give them today, where we say, oh, these are the best painters of all eras. And I think what'll happen is the Golden Age will, as you get further and further away from something, sometimes the narrative or the interest actually gets greater, where people get excited about it. Now, there are elements where that could fail, where you get certain characters that kind of fall out of favor and get forgotten. But as I said, the artwork and the coolness of the Golden Age, I think, will resonate with people in the future. So I hope that long-winded, weird explanation makes sense. But I do see it as actually being something even more collected in the future. And as more time passes, the Golden Age books are only going to get rarer. They're not going to get, there's no more being produced. So they're only going to get rarer. A lot more of them will have disintegrated. And people will treasure them even more, I believe. And you'll see the values associated with them going up. So I do have a strong feeling of the Golden Age. Okay, but that's my biased opinion because I collect Golden Age, but at the end of it. Next question comes from Bat Grant. Alan, in the comic Amazing Adventures number 8, 1971, there is an early advertisement for bodybuilding. The ad is a very young Arnold Schwarzenegger posing for Welder Products, a weird Wider Products, Wider. That does not give his name. I assume because he was unknown. Do you know if this was the first ad in comics? His first ad in comics? I'm not sure. I actually looked this up to see what his first advertisement is. It wasn't that he wasn't that he was an unknown entity. That they didn't need to put his name because he was so well known. By 1971, Arnold Schwarzenegger was a household name because he had just won the Mr. Worlds. He was considered like very, very major celebrity, even back in the 1970s. So in 1971, he was well known for winning the world bodybuilding contest. So that you don't have to say who he is because people would know, and they would be like, oh, I want to be like him. He's the biggest, the best at the time. So that was part of the thing with that. Now, that ad actually appeared in multiple comics. From what I can tell, though, like the ones that they say, like Red Ryder, I believe Red Ryder number 1 had Arnold Schwarzenegger ad in it as well. A few others did. But from what I can tell, they were later than your Amazing Adventures number 8. So from all I can tell, maybe it's the first, but I'm not 100% sure. It's really hard to find out when certain ads came into comics, and I actually did a lot of research to try to find it, but from what I can tell, yes, you're maybe right, but I could be wrong. From all the ones I did check, it looked like it was the earliest. And I think it's by like several months. It's not like his ads started appearing in 1971 after he won the Worlds in 1970. See, there is a connection there. So probably if you could find earlier comics like January of 1970 or 1971 or maybe December of 1970, those comics might have ads with him. Who knows? If you can find comics and go through them and see, maybe you can find an earlier ad. But that's all I can say. So I hope that helps. And another question from Kuromas. He wrote, what are your top 10 jungle girls of the Golden Age? Okay, so I made a list. I actually did this before where I showed a whole bunch of jungle girls from the Golden Age. I'm going to give you a bunch, and I'm going to show you a few that I really like. I think it makes sense because 10 is actually a pretty big list for jungle girls, because there's not that many. Like, there's not hundreds of different jungle girls. There's maybe like 15 or 20. I'll give you the list of some of the major ones. So there's Rula, Sheena, Judy of the Jungle, Zagra, the Jungle Empress, and Tegra, the Jungle Empress, which are the same person. It just, they changed it from T to Z because Z sounds cooler. Then there's Nyoka and the Jungle Girl, and Princess Pantha, Tiger Girl, Lorna, Cave Girl, Carmilla, the Queen of the Jungle Empire, Fatima, Sari, Jan of the Jungle, and Leopard Girl. Now, those two are very end of the Golden Age. Like, they snuck in, but they were at the very end of the Golden Age, those two. So those are some of them. I'm going to, and there's also the White Princess is another one. Okay, so I'm going to show you some Golden Age jungle girls. So I'm going to start with this one, and I'm going to tell you which one's my favorite. And I think that's probably the best way of doing it. And I have really two favorites. So we got Lorna, the Jungle Queen. This is her first appearance. And as I said, she was kind of at the end. Her and Jan and Leopard Girl were kind of at the end of the Golden Age. This is from 1953. So barely, like, a couple of years in there. So yeah, so this is her first appearance as well. So Lorna, the Jungle Queen. And then we got a bunch of raw ones. We got the White Princess of the Jungle. That's number one of that. And then we got the Zagra. Now I have also the Tegra, but that's a Soti book, so it's in my Soti collection. And then we got Jungle Lil, one I didn't mention, but this is another one of these jungle girls. And then we got Sari, redhead, and okay, so I'm going to show you my favorite three, actually. I had three that I actually denoted as being my favorites. One is Sheena. This is Sheena of the Jungle. And she made her first appearance in Jumbo Comics #1, which I do not have, but I'd love to own. And she was kind of a fun character. Appeared in Fiction House. Then another character that I really, really like is Rula. And she first appeared in JoJo JoJo #8, I believe. And she was a fairly popular character for Fox Featured Syndicate. She appeared in All Top, Rula, and JoJo Comics, and a bunch of random titles. She was just another. She was a very popular character for Fox. This is another copy of her. So this is another Rula. And then another character that I really like. So Rula is probably my favorite. Sheena, then Rula are kind of debatable which one's favorite, but I think I like Rula better because it's Fox, and Fox had more kind of fun stuff. But some of the other ones that I really like, and it's only because of the artist, is this is Judy of the Jungle, and Judy of the Jungle is really great. Just like the artwork that for the covers of her, this is exciting, and it's Alex Schomburg, and he would sign his name Zila at that time. So just really great airbrush covers with and just really skimpy clothing for Judy of the Jungle. And then we got some more Judy of the Jungle. So I'll show you a bunch of Judys. Some of these are some of my favorite covers. So this is another Judy of the Jungle. This is Exciting Comics number 66, another Alex Schomburg. These are all Alex Schomburg's. And we got another Judy of the Jungle, another Exciting. This is Exciting 62, or 63, sorry. And one more Jungle Girl. Maybe another that could make my top 4 or 5 list would be Princess Panther. Another Alex Schomburg cover as well. So this is Thrilling Comics. And these characters would dominate each title. So a lot of Princess Panthers would be in Thrilling. Judy of the Jungle would be in Exciting. So they had their own titles, basically. So those are some of my favorites. What would be your favorite Jungle Girls? Put it in the comments below. I'd like to hear that. And last question, I believe, comes from William Barrett again. Another question from William Barrett. Is 1955 the end of the Golden Age? So 1955, okay. This is one of those things where I'll get some heat for my opinion on this, but for me, the Golden Age is from 1938 to 1955. And I actually have a month as well on that. So it's when Action Comics #1 came out, which I think is September of 1938, somewhere August, September of 1938. That's the beginning of the Golden Age. And the reason that's considered the beginning is it was a real shift in the way comics were done. This was a superhero, and it was something where comics were now being created about a character, rather than just reprints from like newspaper strips. So this was unique in that respect. The other thing that so Superman 1 had a massive impact on the comic market and really shifted the way comics were being created, where people were like, oh, we got to create some new characters for comics specifically, rather than thinking about, let's take these characters from the newspaper strips and put them into comics. So it was a very different way of thinking, and that's why the shift in to the Golden Age. And it really caused a massive swing in terms of interest in comics. Then you get the end of the Golden Age, which was really sparked by the destruction of the innocent and the ramifications of that, where people were basically saying, no more comics. We don't want any comics. Comics are destroying the youth of America. There was the book burnings, there was like all the Senate hearings, and there was all the fallout due to that. And so in order to save the comics, in 1954, they basically came out with the idea of having the Comic Code Authority. Now, the Comic Code Authority, though it was in play, it really didn't impact the comics until March of 1955. So what happened was you get the seal being applied to the comics. And the way that worked was you would have to submit your comics to the Comic Code Authority to get approval and then they would get the stamp on them, and then they would be allowed to go through the distribution channels. So that marked the end of the golden age, because all of a sudden you had to go through this a comic book authority in order to get your books actually distributed. Like, it was actually almost impossible to get your books out if you didn't get that code. And that really limited how much people could do in comics. Like, it created very strict rules that comic producers had to follow. And thus, the end of the Wild West of comics and the end of the Golden Age. Now, here's where there's a little bit of push that I get from people. My good friend Stephen, we have this debate about what is the end of the Golden Age, and he actually places it much earlier, and he refers to it as like 1945, which is what some people consider the beginning of what's called the Atomic Age, because what you have is a real interesting thing happening. You got the atomic bomb, and that's why it's called the Atomic Age. And that bomb dropping actually had a major impact on society and also on comics. You get like a lot more sci-fi happening. You get a lot more interest in nuclear stuff. You get all this kind of weird, radioactive, like, elements into the comics. And so the Atomic Age kind of ran from like maybe 1945, maybe a little bit later. I always go a little bit later on it because, you get a certain style in the early 50s that is a little bit different than the late 40s. So I tend to go Atomic Age is 1950 to 1960. So, but I just said that 1955 is the end of the Golden Age. And so what happens is you got this Atomic Age kind of straddling both the Golden Age and the Silver Age. It's sort of like the Forgotten Age. Often most people don't really mention the Atomic Age. Most people, when they talk about the Great Ages, they talk about the Platinum Age, which is pre-Action 1. They talk about the Golden Age, which is Action 1 and to the end of where the comic code gets put into play. And then they talk about the Silver Age, which is once that code comes into play. And then they talk about the Bronze Age, where you get the weakening of the code and you get certain story arcs that are more mature coming into the Bronze Age. And then you get the Copper Age, which is another shift in the market. So those are kind of the great ages of comics. And the Atomic Ages was one of these ages that kind of is in there. A lot of people during that time would refer to it as the Atomic Age. But it's one of those things that younger generations, my generation, would not necessarily be as aware of. And so that's kind of the way to understand it. Even within the Golden Age prior to 1945, there are what's called the War Era. There's the post-war era. There's early Golden Age. There's even subdivisions of the Golden Age. So it's kind of one of those things where there's multiple ages even within an age. I tend to like to keep the more broad ages, where it's the Golden Age from 1938 to 1955, Silver Age 1955 to 1969, Bronze 1970. And it's a little bit easier to manage what you consider a Golden Age or Silver Age book. So just something to think about. What's your opinion? What are the major ages? If you look it up on Google, they kind of go in line with what I'm saying, but and CGC denotes it that way, Heritage denotes it that way. I'm just going by what is the common method of denoting which age is which. So with all that being said, I hope that answers your question. Please, if you have a question you want to ask, put it in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up. I worked hard to go through and to research all these questions. Yeah, I hope I earned your thumbs up. So thanks again for watching. Bye for now.